big challenge for season 5 was having to plot out an entire season, something we hadn't done thoroughly because we always believe that Discovery creates all sorts of interesting storytelling opportunity. But for season 5, we needed to do an entire season, plot it in such a way that it led up to the X-Files movie, which had actually been shot the summer before we ever did season 5.
What I need from you guys is to tell me what the hell happened last night.
You want the truth?
Yeah, I want the truth.
Back when we did Unusual Suspects, neither David nor Gillian were available, and we had to come up with an episode without Mulder or Scully, which, thank goodness, we had the lone gunman, who had already been established, to build an episode around.
Bingo. Government hack is a snap. Last week I got into the Maryland DMV, changed my endorsement so I could handicap park. I got tinnitus.
Vince Gilligan had this story idea, and we were working on it actually over at my house, and we had the board set up and his storyboard in the backyard, and there was a piece missing, and we just couldn't come up with how to get out of the situation. Why doesn't this assassin just kill the gunman, the lone gunman? And it was a flashback story, and it was in 1989, and we were pacing around my backyard, and it was a moment like at the end of Casablanca. It was Round Up the Usual Suspects kind of moment, because I just turned to him and I said, X. He said, X? I said, X. X gets it. X has another agenda. X is the assassin. It's not some other character. It's X. It's our X. It's perfect. It's a guy who we don't know what his allegiances are. We don't know why he's doing it. He wouldn't kill the gunman because he's trying to help Mulder.
That's it? Just trying to intimidate us? To scare us? So we'll keep quiet?
Byers, I swear to God, I'll shoot you myself.
I just heard, okay, you're in another X-Files episode. And I think I was on the road doing stand-up at the time. So I was like, okay, great. I thought, okay, just fax me, the 2 pages or 3 pages, generally the one scene that it's in. And I'm at a hotel, and these hotels, they charge like $14 a page, basically, right? So I thought, I'll get $28. I could, pay that. And then in comes, 69 pages at $14 a page. I'm like, what the hell have I done? Who's gonna? Oh man, why didn't somebody say something? So I think that show cost me money.
It was a lot of fun to shoot that show. It was the first show that the gunman carried, and I had a real good time shepherding Tommy and Dean and Bruce, because they were nervous. They had the whole hour to carry. I remember one image in that show where Signe Coleman, who they thought, at this point in the episodes, they thought that she was a villainess. She knocks on the door, and she comes in, and I lined the 3 of them up, one behind the other. And the image I had was that of the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and the Lion and the Wizard of Oz all lined up shaking behind Dorothy. And I shot it that way, and I think the sequence really worked out well, and somebody asked me where I came up with that. I said, from the Wizard of Oz.
Kill Switch was a William Gibson script, who was a novelist, which means when you're writing a novel, there's no budget. You just write, just make stuff up. Lots of really intricate stuff happens in this scene. So the script comes, and it is the biggest thing in terms of complexity, not scale, but complexity that I'd ever looked at for X-Files.
Kill Switch was huge. I think Kill Switch is probably one of the most expensive episodes we ever did, certainly the most expensive single episode we ever did in Vancouver, and had the longest number of shooting days of any single episode.
Get in the car, Scully.
The thing that I thought was compelling was that Mr. Gibson was able to and Tom Maddox was able to put forth the idea of this uploading your personality and your intelligence onto the web and actually becoming a separate entity of yourself in that environment. And he did it with enough information and enough research and enough possibility that you thought, maybe in the future, could that happen?
What plans did he find out?
Uploading
transfer of memory, of consciousness to the distributed system maintained by the AI. Imagine being mingled so completely with another, you no longer need your physical self.
Kill Switch was the one where Mulder goes into the little trailer that the computer is in, and it takes him over and implants hallucinations in him, so he's got all these gorgeous nurses all around him, and that Scully has to come in and punch the nurses out. One of the great fight scenes ever. Scully punching out big blonde nurses. I could watch that over and over.
All of these women are spies!
Scully!
Christmas Carol was another one of the mythology shows that we felt demanded to be done because we had set up the idea that these women had been abducted and we'd seen Scully's abdomen swollen as if she were pregnant. In fact, that film actually is of Gillian Anderson pregnant. And it was like the other shoe had never dropped on that. And we worked out that entire story, John Shive and Vince Gilligan and myself, happening to another character, not to Scully. We'd finished the entire story and we're starting to write, and it was not working. It wasn't right, and we weren't happy with it. And then we realized it's got to be Scully. It's got to be the other shoe of this mystery dropping. It's got to be her child. And when we did that, the story rewrote itself.
You're doing the same thing with Melissa. You're seeing her in this child, but that does not make this child my granddaughter.
They had hired a little girl who was 4 years old, and I don't think she had to say more than 1 or 2 words. She just kind of sat and played with toys on the floor, whatever she did in part 1. Suddenly I'm handed Emily, part 2. And I've got this 4-year-old girl that's established in part 1, so fine. And we go to work, and we got the sequence where the little girl is on the table in the examining room in the hospital. And we're all set, we're lit, everybody's ready to work, and we bring the little girl in, and we sit her on the table, and she doesn't want to be there.
The poor little girl just freaked out. It was the hospital room set. She'd been through this, episode last week, and there was no hospital, and for some reason the hospital, she said, I don't want to play anymore, and she would not stop crying.
I said, Bob, you better get down here. So Bob got on the phone. He had seen an episode of Millennium that had a 6-year-old in it who was a bigger little girl, but she can act, bring her down. So I shot my episode with this new little actress, and they had to go back and reshoot the portions of the first episode with her.
Just shoot another girl who was also very good, but another girl over Scully's double, anything we could do to fake this. At one point, we even digitally changed the girl's clothes. We had a wide shot of a house with the girl in her father's arms, and it was the other girl, but they went and digitally painted her new outfit onto this other girl. So it was another lesson in children and animals.
We thought long and hard about what the fate of Emily should be. And we thought about keeping her alive, and then we thought about her disappearing. We considered all kinds of possibilities. But what finally seemed like the idea that was most tragic and consistent with the conspiracy, the idea was that she was created not so that she would live, but so that she would be an experiment.
And we got a lot of heat for that. A lot of people hate that episode because, how could you do that to Scully? And I don't fault him for that, but there wasn't there wasn't really any other choice.
David Duchovny's character basically gave up his belief in aliens and extraterrestrials in season 5, and Agent Scully, Gillian Anderson, traded beliefs with him, and she started to believe in the existence of extraterrestrials and the fact of her abduction.
Mulder, why are you tiptoeing around the obvious fact here? This is Skyline Mountain. We're right back here on Skyline Mountain.
And you think it's related to your abduction from the same place?
Well, you can't deny the connection.
You think this is some kind of abduction scenario?
No, I'm not saying that.
Do you have any evidence of that?
What do you mean by evidence?
That's what I'm asking you.
I stepped in and directed this second part of a 2-part mythology series. And I wanted it to be big. I wanted it to be special. I wanted to do something that we hadn't done before. These 2 episodes involved an abduction scenario, And we chose this fantastic location, which was a dam which had a bridge in front of it.
The DWP up there in Canada were unbelievable. I mean, they lit the whole top of that dam for them. They said, "Oh, no, we'll do that for you." And it was one of those, I guess, built in the 20s or the 30s. It was like gaslight going down, and they lit the whole thing. And then there's so many shots where the dam is in back of it, and they turned the dam off because it was making too much noise. And, well, this would look better if the water was running. Then they would turn the water on. I mean, can you imagine in L.A. ever having that happen? I don't think so.
We rented this enormous soundstage, enormous. And we built the bridge, recreated the bridge that was at the dam inside the soundstage, completely from scratch. And the lighting people, that would be the physical effects person and the DP, created this giant lighting rig, which simulated a spaceship. And it was so good and so elaborate, and he had a big crane that flew it over the bridge, that most of my camera work of it actually takes no computer augmentation.
Now it's coming at us.
In the abduction, we created snow falling from the sky, but I wanted it to be a kind of particulate matter that, as the abductee, the character played by Veronica Cartwright, was pulled from her wheelchair, we shot the film with the snow falling and with her being dropped into her wheelchair, so that when the film was reversed, she rose from her wheelchair and the snow actually appeared to be going upward.
They put me up about 30 feet in the air on a big harness, and they dropped me down with a snow machine of, blowing on my face of soap suds, which that's not too cool when it catches on your nose and you can't do anything and your legs suspended like this backwards on this harness. And then on the tip of your nose you have the snowflake, which is actually like a soap bubble. And you're just thinking, oh, God, don't sneeze, don't do anything.
With season 5, we knew we were going to be hitting these very dramatic marks, which were the mythology episodes, and that we wanted to lighten or leaven the season with quirky episodes, with lighter fare.
If you two will excuse me, I really don't have time for this. I have to travel tonight to the University of Ingolstadt to deliver an international address.
Sir, unless you want your scientific achievements to end up as a footnote on the Jerry Springer Show, I suggest that you make the time.
Jerry Springer Show?
Postmodern Prometheus was a very popular show for everyone who worked on it and for everyone who saw it.
It was a kind of combination fairy tale, folk tale, and revolved around the Frankenstein story, using sort of modern science. I took an old style, which is black and white, and an old approach, which is a kind of James Whale approach to science fiction, and came up with a story about a lovelorn monster who happened to have a Cher fetish.
Cher was originally asked to be in the episode, and she had actually agreed to be in the episode. By the time we were ready to make it, Cher was not available to do only the concert portion at the end. But as it was, they did give us permission to use her music and to get a body double who looked very much like Cher to appear at the end. So I thought Chris did a great job because it really sells.
When I first came on the show, I remember it was the last episode that was shot in Canada, and it was the season finale. And I think Chris had told me that it was a character that they wanted to have recur.
Mimi Rogers was David Duchovny's idea, and it was a great idea. And also, I think the reason that Mimi Rogers came and did it was because of David. They had worked together previously. She had the physical stature, bearing, mien that we needed for the character. She was ultimately going to be a villain. And she was believable as an ex-love interest of Mulder's.
When David and Chris called me, they told me about the character, and they said that, she was a character out of Mulder's past, and that she was another FBI agent, and that, you know, it was going to be a very sort of femme fatale-ish role, you know, have elements of not knowing which way she was going to go. So I found that, you know, very appealing.
I've done okay without you.
Hey, I'm on your side.
The end was really an emotional experience for all of us because we knew it was the end. You know, we knew this was going to be the last one in Vancouver and with that particular group of people. And by that time, it had grown to a company of almost over 400 people who were working. You know, we had 2 crews, and it was just behind the scenes, the construction and everything that you put it all together. It was a lot of people that had been through a lot together.
Many people who had actually been there since the first episode of the show had been together as a kind of family. And we were basically saying goodbye, so long, and we may never see you again. It was very hard. It was for me as a producer. It was like you know, disbanding the World Championship team.
Of course, Chris wrote that, and he, as a farewell to Vancouver, he wrote the teaser to take place in Vancouver in this big stadium they have up there, GM Place, where they do the hockey and all of this and that. And I believe it holds 17,000 people. Of course, you can't afford to hire 17,000 extras. It would have been totally impossible. So I said, you know, this is our farewell episode. Let's give the people of Vancouver a chance to say goodbye. So we put you know, the stories out in the newspapers and the TVs and everything else and said, come be an extra on the X-Files. You're invited to come down. We're going to give away, you know, prizes. You can meet David and Jillian and all this actors, you know, Cigarette Smoking Man, this and that. Well, we turned away 5,000 people. The lines went for miles and miles and miles. We filled that stadium all the way to the top. These people, for 8 hours, over and over and over, for every angle I needed, did everything I asked them. It was unbelievable, you know. They'd sit there hushed, they'd watch, they'd get scared when they heard the gunshot, they'd stand up, they'd race for the expo. You know, cut, everybody back. Within 30 seconds, they were all back to their places. You could hear a pin drop. They were so quiet. They were so cooperative. It was just like the greatest thing I'd ever done in my life. I don't know anybody else who's ever directed 15,000 people, you know.
You see all the papers and you read all the magazines that say the show's a big hit, but you don't really get a sense of it unless you go to the conventions and you have a group of people who really, you know, are digging the show. So I think this was the first chance for the crew and the people who hadn't been on the road or hadn't gone to any of these things to really see the impact of what they had done over the last 5 seasons, I guess. To see 12,000 people just go nuts for a show that they've been working on since season 1. And I know that when we came to set a few days later, they were still quite jazzed and electrified about that.
What do you hope to find? I mean, in the end.
Whatever I hope to find is in here. Maybe I'll know it when I find it.
It was interesting to be not just leaving Vancouver, but lighting the X-Files on fire. The whole thing felt like, you know, the end of a world, sort of, for us. I'll always look back on those 5 years and that 5th season in particular, since it was really an emotional farewell, as a big, you know, a milestone in my life.